my skin has not aged at the same rate as my Caucasian peers. And it's really, it starts to become really like, I'm going to be 50 in 2 weeks. And like, it's starting to become very startling, you know, how different it is. Like your face is not like aged in that regard. But yo, with the, like bringing us to our Caucasian peers.
People of Pallor.
People,
Yes.
Dude, when, like, cause this feels like you wrote it right when everything hit the fan, you know, but I assume not. It couldn't have been, right?
No, there was a lag time. And it's funny because, right, the timing of things, we have no control over that. We start doing what we're doing back when it doesn't make any sense. And then maybe things kind of come together and it feels like, but this has been brewing a long time, like for me and in the world, the Gestalt, you know, that we've been trying to say something.
Yeah.
Forever, for centuries, but also for years, you know? Yeah. And this is just part of that. I started writing this. I mean, I've been writing it my whole life, obviously, but I actually put pen to paper maybe, I don't know, like a year ago, something like that. But it's funny because two old friends recently were exchanging stories about me in my presence, and they both had the story, two white guys. I've known them like 20 years. They each had a story of when we first met, and they said to me, just making small talk, Smyer, what kind of name is Smyer? And in each case, I said something to the effect of, some schmuck named Smyer thought he could own another human being. And we had just met. But it's a fucked up question to ask a Black person because you know the answer.
Right. And you're right, because ordinarily you ask that and they're like, well, my family came from Lithuania or something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, or whatever ordinarily means. Like it's just not, it's the assumptions, the things you have to pretend in order to ask me that automatically create a hostile environment.
Well,
and I'm going to,
it's interesting though, because this book is not by Adam. This book is by Daquan. You know what I mean? True. And like, there's a difference because, and I know, you know, similar with Knucklehead, there's an authorial voice that you have that is you, but not you. And the more you let it become its own thing, the more it becomes somebody else, you know, like there's parts in here that's like, you know, that I could see parts of you from conversations over the years. And there's other parts like in the beginning and the outro that definitely feel like its own character and almost feel like a poem, you know, like especially in the ending, you know, like the way it's in there. I thought it was fascinating. And I thought this character was hilarious. It reminded me of the fact that all the time with the characters, we can create a character that is basically an avatar of ourselves, but by giving them birth, they become their own creature. You know?
Absolutely. And not to mention, it was very freeing to be writing through this person. That's the beauty of fiction, right? Is that I'm still expressing myself, but I'm not only am I just an imperfect subjective person, I'm channeling some other fictitious subjective imperfect person. And so kind of all bets are off. And so, yes, I was able to speak. It frees me up from the obligation of being complete or thorough. It's not a fair and balanced piece.
No, it's a person. It's a persona. And I think like, that's one of the things I think like was cool about it is that persona. You start to get a hint of what the backstory is for this person over time, you know, because like everything in there is something that's like every word that he's going off of or phrase he's going off of is something that, you know, people have had legitimate issues with, but his unique selection of which words and his unique way of reacting to those words. And some of them are more like are more common and some are more specific to the characters, what, you know, he's going off of. Like, for instance, woke gets hardly anything, right? But in part, it implies a bunch. Like he doesn't even, I'm not even, like, that's not even, you know.
Yes.
He makes it an older character, you know, because now woke is just some new shit. Like, no. You know, like coming in. So there's like a lot of moments like there that imply this other character, which I think is hilarious. And I gotta say, like, I tell you, like, I would read parts, I laugh out loud, and I have to read them out loud, you know, everybody's around me just to hear it. But it was really funny. And it was also like really interesting trying to put your finger on what actually this thing is. Because It's because it's more complicated than it looks at first glance. So I think like when I see something like this, it makes me excited because there's a permission that's happening on the part of the author and the people around them that says, hey, this is cool. Let's do this. This is not what we expect. It's something interesting, you know?
It never stops. Like every time we look around, there was a new shackle that's been there all along. We got to get that one off. And so that's good. Yeah, we should do whatever the fuck we want. This event is hosted by Moe's Books in Berkeley, I should say. You can keep that to yourself, is available there.
Going over this book, like I was just thinking, I don't think I've seen, really, I don't think I've seen kind of a book that was both light and heavy, you know? Like I can't think of a comparison really, you know, because in some of the style of the book, because it's so quick, is like the kind of novelty books that my family would have in like the 70s, you know, like but then when you read it, like that's using that form, but it's doing something a lot more interesting. And then I was thinking about like who would I buy the book for? Who would like I was thinking for me it was two things. One, I could see something like somebody just like me buying and reading it and it'd be funny. And like you could read it straight through, you could just randomly pick parts of it. But then I also thought like it'd be a funny book to passive aggressively leave in the break room at work too. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah. And I think like the tone in the beginning where it's like, there is an assumption you're talking to well-meaning people, right? And that like, that's part of it, that there's something, okay, you mean well, but if you really mean well, you got to do the work and you got to think about what you're actually saying and what you're actually doing, right? So I could see that through it. And I could also see like, this is a great book to give to a spouse or a partner or a friend and be like, it's not you. When this person said this thing to you that you were like, for all weekend, were like, you know, what did they mean? Obviously articulate, but other stuff on there too. What does that mean? You read them like, no, turn to page 34, look it up. It's not me. This has happened, you know, tons of times. And you know, this is a common response to it.
That was a major motivation. That was, yes, the conversation has taken on a life of its own, like since I let it go, and it's become some sort of double reverse mock dialogue something. But a thing I was consciously thinking when I wrote it was I'm here for people who experience these things to know that they are not alone, that this happens so much. This is a thing. That's really just me saying to people, that just happened to you. This is a thing. Laugh it off, finish out your workday, and go home.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think you did a really nice job on too was that I'm always struck by there's a balance between speaking truth, improving the situation, and catharsis, right? And so some of the stuff we have been at together in the past, there has been moments where people have said stuff in a way, also, you know, addressing white people, that to me has been more about their own personal catharsis of saying it and feeling empowered to say it, but not actually really helping the situation much, right? Like really like sometimes specifically making it worse, like taking like earnest people and be like, oh, you want to come to here? You know, and then like attacking them in this sort of like catharsis thing that and I've always been struck with, you know, because there's a line, like you don't want to just pander to people, obviously, but you also don't want to take well-meaning people and be like, and like they're coming up smiling, trying to be nice, and you need to kick them in the teeth, right?
Yes.
Because that might feel good for you, you know, and you might have justifications in your life for doing it, but that doesn't help. You know what I mean?
No, it's definitely a fine line. Those are the two. Yeah, because there's another thing of like, I'm well-intentioned, but if you make me look at myself too much or piss me off too much, I'm going to be completely on the side of people who want your demise. And so what kind of person is that anyway? So there's a little bit of a stress test, you know.
Which is a human response, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, you don't want to just alienate people from the get-go, but there's a certain game we've been playing for a long time now. And I think that we thought that if we played that game, they wouldn't vote for Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah, right. So that's too far over on the other side.
So maybe it's, you know, maybe we play with the tone a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the question. How do you play with the tone in a way that you're totally loyal to yourself and your own pain and your own anger, and you don't sell that part of yourself out to be palatable, but at the same time, don't go into, progressive grift mode. You know what I mean? Like, just, yelling at people because and I live in Portland now, and there's like, and you're in the Bay, there is a symbiotic relationship between angry Black people and masochistic liberal white people, where they're like going back and forth, and it's not healthy. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, like I've seen like in the reparations talk is a version of this, right? Reparations is an incredibly important point and something that in some way we need to figure out to deal with massive generational income inequality and education inequality and all that, right? And then you also get like your local grifter like, yeah, reparations, cash at me now, like, oh, dude, reparations is not gonna be held by you getting $125 in your bank.
Yeah, right.
So like there's always that kind of thing. And like, so within the tone here, I felt like there was a playfulness in the tone, and there was also a self, like, it's not overt, but there's a self-effacing humor too, in the way the descriptions are being like, nope, not gonna do it. No, it's a comedic voice. It's not just it's not a self-righteous voice in that regard. Like the fact that the voice is also in some ways laughing at itself as it makes good points, but isn't like, sanctimonious. Because I think that sanctimonious part is when everything gets ugly, is when people start getting sanctimonious.
Yes, you got to check yourself. It's the beauty of writing as opposed to just, coming at people sometimes in person, because you have a chance to refine. And again, going through the persona of someone else kind of relieves the ego. And it is a fine line. And it's nice that people are hearing it.
Work. I mean, that's your sophistication on this, it's really impressive. At the same time I was reading this, I was watching Michelle Cole's I May Destroy You, and which is brilliant. And the reason I think it's brilliant is because every character in there both makes excellent points about and deals with issues of sexuality and consent. And every character in there makes really powerful discussions about moments where they've been victimized or felt victimized. And every character in there also is a line stepper to somebody else. So that there's this kind of balance between. And so in some ways it's very humanizing because it allows you to see both sides of things, but and that's important. But it's also balanced because as long as you can acknowledge your own, stuff, then your critique of others becomes even stronger. It's this whole thing speaks to this thing of like I've seen so many people overnight are like, before they're like, well, and all of a sudden Black Lives Matter, we have to fight immediately. The entire society all of a sudden felt vulnerable. And because they felt vulnerable, they were more empathetic and understanding to people who have spent their whole lives feeling vulnerable, right? Mm. And so we had that. But even if you're well-meaning, you can't just go, I'm not racist anymore. Because it's like saying, I'm not radioactive anymore. Because I realized I was radioactive. So now I'm not radioactive. I'm anti-radioactive. I'm going to fix radioactivity, right? It's not something that's that simple. So like there's, I like the balance of that in there because that's what I mean by the well-meaning part. Like people who aren't well-meaning, fuck them. There's nothing to do with them, right?
Right.
A lot of satire critiques Black satire critiques liberalism and doesn't critique conservatism. And the reason why is because you can't like have a debate with people who don't think you're human. Yes. You know what I mean? Where the thing that's interesting about liberalism, white liberalism from the Black perspective, is that white liberalism has the goal of equality, has the goal of all these things. And yet, because it has this goal and this aim and fails to get there, it's inherently funny.